Serious. What do you think is the creepiest, most disturbing unsolved mystery ever? The Setagaya family murder. Late on the night of December 30, 2000 in Setagaya, Tokyo, a man broke into the house of a family of 4, strangled the son in his bed, stabbed the father, and brutally killed the mother and daughter. The killer then spent hours in the house eating their food, using their toilet, and going through their paperwork like he owned the place, and eventually left, never to be found since. The West Mesa Bone Collector. The bones of dozens of women were found at a construction site. No other clues. The case of Adam immediately came to mind. Unidentified male child whose torso was discovered in the River Thames in London, United Kingdom, on the 21st of September 2001. Dubbed Adam by police officers. The unidentified remains belonged to a black male, around 4 to 8 years old, who had been wearing orange girls' shorts. The post-mortem showed that Adam had been poisoned. His throat had been slit to drain the blood from his body, and his head and limbs had been expertly removed. Investigators believe the child was likely from southwestern Nigeria, and that several days before his murder, he was trafficked to the United Kingdom for a moody ritual sacrifice. To date, nobody has been charged with Adam's murder, and his true identity remains unknown. https en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Adam. Murder victim. Rip little dude. What happened to Pedro Lopez? He is one of the most prolific serial killers in history, and claims to have murdered over 350 women and girls. Since his release in 1998, his whereabouts are currently unknown. https en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/pedrol%c3%b3pez. Serial killer. The Axeman of New Orleans. Guy was murdering people but wrote a letter that he wouldn't kill anyone who played jazz in their home. Never caught. Honestly, the Cape intruder isn't disturbing, just weird as hell. During the night in Cape Main Inn, like 2005 people who kept their doors unlocked would wake up to find a man staring at them, and he would quickly flee. No people were ever injured and nothing was ever stolen. They just watched people sleep apparently. Asha Degree. What made that young girl leave home in the middle of a storm with a backpack?
The Cleveland torso murderer. When my grandparents were my age, there was a serial killer who chopped off the heads and appendages of 12 to 20 people and left their torsos for people to find. The famous detective Elliot Ness was on the case, and the killer taunted him by leaving 2 torsos within full view of his office. The killer was never identified, nor were the majority of the victims.
The disappearance of the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children are siblings who disappeared in 1966. There are still to this day investigations ongoing to try and find the remains of these children. There have been foundations of sheds and houses dug up. The children have never been found and the suspect, S, has never been identified. In the early 80s, all within 18 months of each other, 3 paperboys in the Des Moines, Iowa area all went missing during their morning route. The cases have never been solved. There are theories ranging from a pedophilia ring, an ex-employee who was a creeper kidnapping them, and even a lone wolf type situation. It's a bizarre case that has baffled Iowa for years. Technically not unsolved since everyone can guess what happened to her, but it's one of the creepiest. Emo. Alyssa Turney was a teenager who disappeared in 2001. Her stepfather, Michael Turney, was obsessed with her. He stalked her at work, put cameras in the vents to spy on her, and made her sign contracts to say he never molested her. Michael picked her up from school early on May 17, 2001, and she's never been seen since. Her half-sister, Sarah Turney, has an amazing podcast called Voices for Justice which explains the case in detail, and because of her, Michael Turney was arrested in August 2020. The Hinterkaifeck murders always freaked me out. I've read quite a bit about it, and it sounds like it was probably a neighbor. But the creepy part is that the killer was probably living, hiding out in the attic for multiple days beforehand. I read about this for the first time when I went on a multi-night hiking trip. I stayed in cabins. The first night, there was a loft above where we were sleeping. I stared at it all night. The death of Rebecca Zahow has stuck with me. Zahow's nude body was found hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and hands behind her back. Her death was ruled a suicide. As if that wasn't strange enough. 2 days prior to her death, the 6-year-old son of her boyfriend fell down a staircase and died. His death was ruled an accident. There's a lot to read about this case, and I highly recommend it if you're into true crime. Boy in the Box. 1957 Philadelphia. Warning. Graphic details. This story just makes me so sad and sticks out to me as a true crime junkie. Especially with the recent case of a child being found in a Las Vegas suitcase that is still under investigation. Basically, a young boy whose age was estimated to be 3 to 7 years old was found in a box naked and mutilated on the side of a road in Philadelphia. It was strange because the boy appeared to have been very malnourished, but was recently groomed, haircut, fingernails all trimmed. He was covered in scars, some surgical, and many bruises. His bones were broken to fit into this box. Cause of death determined to be blunt force trauma. How anyone could do something like this is just foul and disturbing, to say the very least. The worst part is, it's just a big mystery. Almost nothing to go off of. There wasn't anyone matching his description reported missing. There wasn't any record of this kid. His pure existence was a mystery. Nothing came of the case. Even all these years later, there were some leads, but they didn't result to much. Despite heavy media coverage and a search to find who this boy was. What happened to him? And who did this? What were the surgical scars for? Why the box? Why was he kept malnourished, but well-groomed? In my opinion, it's the city of San Francisco train derailment that occurred in Hardin, NV on the 12th of August 1939. The train, run by the Southern Pacific Railroad at the time, derailed at a bridge over the Humboldt River at a speed range of 60 to 90 miles per hour. The accident resulted in 24 fatalities and multiple injuries. Days later, investigators discovered tools at the bottom of the Humboldt River, determining that the wreck was caused by sabotage of the rails. https en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/1939 City of San Francisco derailment. What happened to the Eilean Moore lighthouse keepers? Most likely they were swept out to sea by violent waves. But no storms were reported on the dates they went missing. And if there were, why would they leave the safety of their lighthouse? The murder of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme. He was killed over 30 years ago and no one have found the murder. The Black Dahlia case. How can someone randomly disappear and be found chopped in half by a surgeon who was never found? What? Doesn't add up to me. In 1969, a student was killed in the stacks of the library at my old college, Penn State, and was found with a singular stab wound on her chest. It wasn't even late or anything. And while there were many suspects, no one was ever arrested for it. It's insane how someone could kill a person in broad daylight at a major university and get away with it. It's not really anything super crazy in comparison to other stories here. It's just weird to me personally because I would always study there and I didn't find out about it. Until after I graduated. I can't remember his name. But there was a case of a college-age young man, Brian I think is his first name, who was reported missing after a night out. There's security camera footage of him entering a bar, but absolutely no footage of him leaving. Like he went into the bar and just flat out dropped off the face of the earth. The last I knew, he's never been found and nobody knows what happened to him. ETA. Since it keeps coming up. The bar was on a second floor at that time with only one public exit. The police extensively reviewed all the footage. Everyone, except for Brian, who was at the bar that night, was seen leaving on the cameras.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.